Hear me well, all of you? Okay, good. Uh, I like always to begin with this. Actually, we have two presentations today. I'll try to do them all in whatever. I don't know. But feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. Okay? Don't worry about it. You'll not cut out my train of thoughts. I wrote this presentation, so I know what I'm doing, so don't worry. Interrupt me, ask questions if there's a loophole or some gap of information. I always like to start with this verse from the Bible because I had other plans in life, and God had different plans for me. And I was born, as I said, maybe in a Muslim family that claims descent from the tribe of Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, in Beirut, Lebanon. Lebanon is in the Middle East, south of Turkey, okay, not south of Texas. And, if you used to watch Jay Leno, he does jaywalks and asks people about, questions like that, and some of them really flunk out. But I'm saying that, it's south of Turkey, not south of Texas, and Lebanon was mentioned in the Bible many times. The Lebanon mentioned in the Bible is actually Mount Lebanon. It's the range of mountain, you see there, and the green part next to the Mediterranean. It's a beautiful mountain range that goes up to 11,000 feet tall, and very nice, beautiful, and it's special because it has a cedar tree. The cedar trees, okay, and the cedar trees were used by Solomon to build the temple, remember? And some of those cedars are 3,000 years old, like this one. I used to take my family to see the cedars in the snow. Since I moved to the Midwest, never missed the snow, And King Solomon and his ally Hiram really cut them down and built it, as I said. The Lebanese are very proud of the cedar tree. They have it on their flag, really, because it's mentioned in the Bible. And as I said, Lebanon started as a country, Christian country, if I can say, but with 50% of the people were Muslims then, and 50% Christians. So they wanted something special. They thought the cedar tree is a special thing. So they have it on their flag. I was speaking in St. Catherine in Ontario, Canada, a few really years ago. And I saw that they have the maple leaf on their flag. I told them, you may have a leaf on your flag, we have the whole tree. It wasn't a popular joke in Canada. Nobody laughed. So let me go quick here because we kind of don't have time, and I didn't want really to bother you with a lot of details about the history of the Middle East. The Christians in Lebanon are followers of the saint called Maroon. This guy, okay, called Maroon, and his followers came to the mountains of Lebanon, and they lived in the top mountain, the mountain tops, to escape persecution from other Christians, and the monks lived in those caves. Later they became museums, really. Let me go quick here so that we'll talk about ISIS and jihad in due time. And so the Arabs came. Lebanon was almost Mount Lebanon, all of it Christians, till the Arabs came out of Arabia and conquered the Middle East. And they, many people converted under social pressure, if I can say. The Arabs reached the gates of France, actually. So they conquered from India to Spain, actually. Many empires rose and fell. The Ottoman Empire was the last empire that really was able to conquer East Europe. And they were able to reach the gates of Vienna in 1529 when Martin Luther was writing, actually, okay? The Turks were able to to take Byzantium. Constantinople fell to them, and then they conquered also the rest of the Middle East. So in 1529, when Martin Luther was writing, the Ottomans were at the gates of Vienna, okay? And Martin Luther said, I'm doing a PhD in missiology, missions at Fort Wayne, and I wrote a paper on this. The Ottoman Turks, which is the Muslims in all in those days, were at the gates of Vienna when Martin Luther wrote saying that our vocation as Christians is to defend our country. And a Christian soldier is, the word vocation is very special in Lutheran theology. The word vocation means that a Christian soldier defending his country is like a pastor in the church, but outside the walls of the church. That's Martin Luther, what he wrote that, and he also took chunks from the Quran, the Book of Islam. It was in Latin then. Then he translated that into German, and then he said we need to learn more about the Quran in order to know how to reach Muslims. The Turks did their last attempt to conquer Vienna in 1683. And in September 1683, okay, they reached the gates of Vienna. This is why bin Laden, when Osama bin Laden perpetrated his terrorist attacks in September 2011, saying that here we come back, okay, in a different way. So he chose September to show that the Muslims are coming back again, etc. So let me go quick here. The last empire, Muslim empire, global empire, was the Ottoman Empire that fell to the Allied forces, and we don't have time actually to do a lot of things, but the last head of the Muslim nation was a Turk, an Ottoman, and he was deposed by both the Allied forces and Ataturk, and he was the last caliph, okay? Caliph means successor of Muhammad. So the Ottoman Turk was the last head of the Muslim nation who was deposed after World War I, and this is why in 1998, when bin Laden declared war on the West, he said, we've been fighting the West for 80 years. People thought, some would-be experts in the Middle East thought that the problem between the West and the East started with the creation of Israel. But this guy, Israel was 60 almost years then. And this guy is saying 80 years. Is he a lunatic? He was talking about the fall of the Ottoman Empire after World War I and the abolition of the caliphate, which is the seat of Muhammad. It was like going to the Vatican, removing the Pope, and forcing the Catholics to speak Arabic. This is what happened in Turkey then. So this is why nowadays when ISIS declared a caliphate, and this guy called himself Abu Bakr after the first successor of Muhammad, Abu Bakr. We'll talk more about it. Let's go quick here and get to the personal story a little bit. So Lebanon was 50% Christian and 50% Muslim when World War I broke out, and then the Allied forces took over the whole Middle East, okay? And the Christians in Lebanon sent the Maronite, the Catholic patriarch, to ask for a Christian country in Mount Lebanon, like Israel for the Jews, Lebanon for the Christians in the Middle East. Because the Allied forces met in Versailles and they were discussing the destiny of the Ottoman leftovers. But the Muslims also sent a delegation, and the Allied forces refused to grant the Christians their wish. And they decided to come up with a country called Lebanon, Greater Lebanon. It wasn't that great. The people were less than 2 million people, and the size was smaller than New Jersey, you know. But they wanted to give people a sense of identity, okay? So they declared Greater Lebanon, and actually, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the abolition of the Caliphate, a movement in the Muslim world started, and they were asking for a Muslim empire again, a global Muslim state, and that movement in 1928 was called the Muslim Brotherhood. We don't have time to go into that. We'll talk more later. So the British and the French divided the Middle East after World War I into, on a carved map, they put together new countries that were not there. Iraq, Palestine, Jordan. Jordan was a desert east of River Jordan. It was not there. And they created it to appease the Arabs who helped them revolt against the British, against the Ottomans, I mean. So Sykes-Picot, a British officer and a French diplomat, created Lebanon and installed also a Christian president, as I said, who is Catholic. This is the last president, really. So an empty map, they carved in, new countries, okay? I'm not going to go deeper into the history of the Middle East. We don't have time. If you have questions later, we can talk about it. But one of the biggest problems that were created by the colonial powers was the creation of Israel in 1947. It was declared by the United Nations, actually, but the British really gave Jews the right to go back to the Promised Land, okay, and immigrants came from all over the world, Jewish immigrants, and they started fighting with the Arab population, and in 1947, the UN declared a two-state solution, a Palestinian government and Israel. While the Israelis celebrated a Jewish state after 2,000 years of diaspora, the Arabs revolted against the UN resolution, gathered an army, ragtag army, if I can say, and attacked Israel. They were defeated. A big humiliation. People, Israelis who were less than 500,000 defeated 5 Arab armies, and almost 1 million refugees came out, Palestinian refugees came out of Palestine and Israel. Half of them settled in Lebanon. So Lebanon had a problem between Christians and Muslims because the Muslims were not happy with a Christian president, actually. So it created problems because 500,000 Palestinian refugees came to Lebanon, and most of them are Muslims, and they swelled the ranks of Muslims, and Muslims started to ask for more political representation. In 1958, we had our first civil war in Lebanon. It lasted 8 months. I was minus 2 years old, so I wasn't part of it. And the U.S. Marines came into Beirut and stopped the civil war. This is a rare some of the rare pictures of U.S. Marines on the shores of Beirut. I was born, as I said, in a Muslim family in 1960, and I sensed the tension between Christians and Muslims at an early age. When we used to play marbles in the streets, we used to be attacked by Christian boys, okay? I suffered from an attack at the age of 7. Pierre means Peter. I was playing marbles, looked up, and I saw Pierre standing above me with a stick, and that stick was in air, and he just banged me on the head. He got me here. There is a scar. Yeah, so 2-inch maybe. So I could have lost my eye. So that was my first encounter with a Christian boy, imagine. So, I mean, love your neighbor, right? So I was sent to a Muslim school like other kids, you know, Muslim kids. We are 10,000 people in Beirut, so there is Shihab Mosque, the Shihabs, I mean, Shihab Bakery, etc. So it was Shihab Mosque and school. So there I learned how to really read the Quran, recite the Quran, and I was, you know, baffled by those cataclysmic events in the Middle East 1967, another war brought more refugees, Palestinian refugees, to Lebanon, and they were armed then and wanted to free Palestine with their weapons. Usually, I do this alone in an hour and a half, but today we're going to engage two things, the personal story as well as the jihad and the ISIS and Shia Sunni Islam. So I joined the Muslim Brotherhood because I thought, when I was 13, I thought they have answers to my questions. Why Israeli just come every week and bomb South Lebanon? Why they break the sonic barrier every 2 weeks? Why we have to dim the lights? Why we are the underdog? Why we are ruled by a Christian president? These were questions nobody could answer. A firebrand from the Muslim Brotherhood just started, to give me answers in the mosque, and I thought he gave me books. I started reading the books written by the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood, and while I was being mentored by a Muslim Brotherhood in Beirut, Zawahiri, the first man of Al-Qaeda today, used to be mentored at the same time by the master philosopher of the Muslim Brotherhood. So if God did not save me, I could have become a terrorist. I was told that Islam is the answer to all of our maladies, and if we go back to Islam, and we will conquer, and we'll not be the underdog again, and we'll regain the old glory. And we, the Muslim Lebanese, are living in shame because we are under a Christian president, and the Christians are crusaders. We need to teach them a good lesson. And as I said, the Christians in Lebanon refused to give any power to the Muslims, who increased in number, and they became 60% of the country. Now the Christians in Lebanon are 13% actually, and the Muslims are the majority. So the Christians formed militias and started fighting back, and so at the age of 13, I was taken to a military training camp with my brother, my only sibling, and we were taught how to shoot rifles, how to shoot rocket-propelled grenades, how to shoot mortars. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood used to do this every year, not because of the civil war, but every year, and because Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, said, teach your kids how to shoot, how to ride, and how to swim. Sounds like Nebraska sometimes, right? But so every responsible Muslim man should teach his kids these things. So it was fun. I mean, I grew up watching Clint Eastwood and Charles Bronson. To handle guns was very attractive. We were taught how to shoot rifles, rocket-propelled grenades, mortars, and the Christian militias were armed to the teeth, and their clergy really kind of blessed their tanks and weapons, and they were really there for a fight. In 1975, a Christian militia ambushed a bus driving Muslims. They killed 27 Palestinians and wounded many others, and a Muslim militia retaliated, and an all-out civil war broke out between Christians and Muslims. I found myself in the streets with a rifle going to high-rise building, shooting at, sniping at Christian neighborhoods. Now, one event is important when I was 15 was I drove, my brother, he didn't have a driver's license. We drove to a Land Rover that belonged to the Muslim Brotherhood, just drove to the front, and we were trying to a new cannon, mortar cannon, 60 millimeters only, very small. And he said we can shell like 2 miles, And after the third shell, I felt not good, I signed up to defend the Muslim community. Then I see myself shelling Christian neighborhoods. Some of them are civilians, innocent people. This is wrong, I thought. So I told him, let's pull over and pull out, and we drove back to the Muslim Brotherhood headquarters, and I met the head of the Muslim Brotherhood and asked him this question: is it okay to shell civilians. He gave me a question. He answered me with a question that could be a key to understand Islam. Who is your example in life as a Muslim? Now, if I ask you, who's your example in life as a Christian, you may say St. Paul or St. Peter or Christ. So as a Muslim, I said, Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. He said, great. This is the best answer, because Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, shelled his enemies with catapults. And catapults are blind medieval, machines, while cannons are blind modern machines. So by analogy, we're doing the same thing. Then he said, you seem to be like a thinker, okay? And you are from a good family. We need new blood. We would like to train you to become one of our preachers. And let me go quick here, because we don't. This really asks who speaks for Islam, okay? Only Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, speaks for Islam. His biography. Not Obama, not anybody else who wants to whitewash Islam. Islam is not Muslims, by the way. Muslims are sinners like us who need the gospel. But Islam is something different. It's the religion, and it's also a political system, and it's a way of life. So it's more than a personal faith. Let me go quick here, because we don't have time. So the Prophet of Islam represents Islam, and his followers came out of Arabia and conquered because they understood what they were doing, right? So the head of the Muslim Brotherhood said, you seem to be like a thinker, and we need new blood. You could be one of our preachers in the future. And he assigned I said, thank you, this is really a big honor. And he assigned a mentor for me from the Muslim Brotherhood from Syria. He was living in exile in Beirut, Lebanon. And this guy was very strict. He was able to microwave me in 6 months into a preacher. I was ready to give my first Friday sermon. Muslims worship, congregate, for sermons on Friday. They pray 5 times a day, but on Friday they come for a sermon and 2 units of prayers. So at noon. So I was ready to go. I memorized everything, And Muslim preachers memorize the sermon. They cannot preach from an outline. They have to be passionate. They have to shout. They have to yell. And the first 2 rows would be spattered with saliva, okay? Maybe this is why Lutherans sit in the back. They are wiser, Yeah, so I had to memorize it and be ready to go. But God had a different plan. I got into a head-on collision a few days before Friday and broke both legs. Okay, this is why Pastor left me a stool here to lean on. And instead of giving that Friday service or sermon, I was hospitalized for 50 days at the American University Hospital. And in those 50 days, I saw how doctors and nurses, they were all speaking English, how they were tending my wounds, and I saw how doctors walk the hallways like half gods and push people around, and I thought, maybe a doctor better than a preacher, right? At least you make more money. And I decided to teach myself more English in order to make it to the American University of Beirut and study medicine. So I started teaching myself English by reading comic books, okay? And I discovered a lot of comic books, and I ran them out of the markets, and I had to shift to novels, and I discovered a novelist called Louis L'Amour. I read all his novels and short story collections, and this is how I learned my English, And in 1980, I was admitted to the American University of Beirut with in the pre-medical program. It was a big honor. It's the Harvard of the Middle East. I want to focus on my studies, but God had a different plan, as you heard in the sermon. Let me go quick here. So this was my last, picture with my brother, and 1980. He was 22 when he was gunned down. So the words of Jesus really changed my heart, it changed my life, and the gospel of Jesus Christ is powerful. Let me go quick here so that we can talk a little bit about Salam as well. So 19, there's a problem here. Okay, repeating itself. Okay. So 1980, 2000, in the year 2000, before I met Pastor Lutz, actually 1999, I was invited, let me backtrack a little bit. 1989, the civil war ended in Lebanon. I decided to be a bridge between the Muslim community and the Christian community and be a peacemaker. The words of Jesus as a blessed be the peacemakers fascinated me. So I just tried to be a bridge between Christians and Muslims. I founded a Christian Islamic dialogue organization and started working to bring people together, and later it was very successful. I was invited to the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C., and where President Clinton was then 1999. It was February 1999, and it was a big honor. The letter was signed by 5 congressmen, and et cetera, et cetera. So this really started my journey to the States, because I fell in love with the country. I felt freedom. People in the Middle East feel like they are cooped in a big prison, and they cannot get out. This is why refugees are coming out from the Middle East, from North Africa, from East Africa. So I fell in love with this country, and I thought maybe one day when I retire, I'll, come to this country, be a traveling preacher, preach the gospel, and when I retire after 65. But God had a different plan. So this is how in 2001, when I was going into that bank building, when I met Pastor Lutz in that bank building. Let me see if I can find, I'm sorry for, it seems I got a different, yeah. So, he invited me to come to seminary. Now coming to seminary was something like, a dream come true. Because as I said, I thought I'll come to the States after the age of 65. And I had planned many things to do that, but God had a different plan. So 2001, met Bernie Luss. 2004, I came to seminary and finished seminary 2008. And before I finished seminary, I was asked to move to Chicago, to start an Arabic church. When I was told to move to Chicago, I wasn't sure. I wasn't there before. I heard Al Capone. I heard the Untouchables. This was my impression of Chicago. Then after driving my conversion van for a few times, we decided to move the whole family in Thanksgiving 2006. And I thought maybe, I could outsmart the people in Chicago and beat the traffic and, travel at night to avoid all the traffic. So I set out from Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was Ann Arbor where I lived. Set out from Ann Arbor, Michigan at 9 p.m. As soon as I hit 294, interstatal there, I discovered something. During the day, they you fight crazy drivers and sit in traffic. At night, they close all lanes for roadworks and keep one lane open. And you sit in traffic again, but behind trucks. And I thought this is really a mission impossible. Who could really start a church in this crazy land, And what's with man is impossible, with God is possible. And I was, in 2 months, we started a Bible study. That summer, 2007, we baptized 7 people from Iran, from Iraq, from Palestine. Now we have baptized so far 33 from different countries, from 8 countries in the Middle East. And we go there, where the Muslims are. We help refugees, we collect furniture, we give it to needy families, Muslim families. We invite them to our celebrations. And every Saturday, usually, when I am not out of town, we gather them. I have a 15-passenger van. I go out, drive them to the church, and we just preach the gospel. We invite Muslims, seekers, liars, what have you, everybody, And then we have a lunch after that, a Middle Eastern lunch. So we have people from 8 countries from the Middle East who come, So that's why I hope that you will be able to support Salam, because this is something that it's God's mission. And every couple of years they say, oh, we don't have money. I am really, I am an associate pastor at a Peace Lutheran Church in Lombard, Illinois, but this position was created only to have me on the annual, which is the roster, But I have to go out and raise funds for the mission, otherwise it will be dissolved. So we've been doing this for 12 years now, and God is good. Like 2 years ago, the head of the board, we have a committee that supervises Salam. He called me and he said, can we meet at Starbucks? I said, okay, sure. Like Starbucks, okay, good coffee. He didn't even offer a coffee, so I thought this is bad news, He said, our account shows only $75. Maybe you should just cancel everything. And I said, no. I'll put everything on my credit card. This must have happened before. It has happened before. And I don't really, we even started 2 mission outposts. I don't want really to back down easily. And after 2 weeks, someone died in Toledo, Ohio, and they bequeathed money to Salam. I mean, I never been there. I worked there 10 years ago, but till now, I don't know who did that, This is God's hand in it. And then money started coming, and we're doing well now. So God is good, and it's God's people who really I am ordained Missouri Synod pastor, but they don't have money for missions. So this is why we established Salam. So I hope that you'll be able to support Salam. So we'll shift gears now and move to the next presentation. Hopefully everything would work here. And and about any question before I start the next leg of the presentation, as they say? Any question? Any question? Everything is okay? Yes.
You said from the Muslim Brotherhood, and you broke your legs, and you were going to be a priest with them, and then you went to the university, American University.
Yeah.
How did the Muslim Brotherhood react?
Yeah. Every time they put me in a Quranic studies, it would break down. Why? Quranic studies like a Bible study. Because I was the most... the guy who memorized most of the Quran among them, and my heart was not there, And then it would break down. Then when I just stopped going to the mosque, they didn't even come after me because they felt they were not able to question me. I knew more than them. I knew about Islam more than them, because I did a master's degree in Islamic history and then later did PhD studies. So they a few months ago, a guy, I went to high school with him. He found me on Facebook and he sent me a message. Hisham, what do I see? Are you doing this for money? They think that there's something, or position, or what? He said, you were the guy who brought us to the Muslim Brotherhood. I was the guy who used to go and bring people to the Muslim Brotherhood. So when somebody like me, according to them,